to try something new. I'll point my camera forward instead of back at me. It'd be just pitch dark at me, but why not show the road, right? Show a little bit of my drive. I would have been remiss to do this in the past, reluctant. I get my R words, my don't want to do it R words crisscrossed. But, you know, nobody's business, right? But it's really such a beautiful drive. As I pointed out, it was really my main decision about where I was going to live when I was looking for my apartment after Irby, or house after Irby, because the further out you go out this I-80, is it I-80? I guess it's 80, I-80, out this highway, the bigger the house and the more power for the dollar you get, the more power for the dollar. Especially right at the beginning of the pandemic, I should have maybe thought about buying, but every other New Yorker had the same idea, and this town of East Stroudsburg is now rated as one of the worst places to buy property in the country now because of all the New Yorkers who had the same idea as I did. So I just came out here to rent. And now, you know, the landlords are like, well, it's time for us to sell. We let someone move into our recently renovated place. So that was part of the decision to take it, you know, with my heebie-jeebies about how bad things were really going to become. To have a place that was just recently finished being renovated, just as all this was going down, how could you not walk into it? That was fortunate timing. I was the fortunate one. They hiked my rent about halfway through, you know, after my first year lease into my second year lease. They hiked the rent on me $100 a month from $1,400 to $1,500, which when you tell the locals about this, they already think you're insane to be paying, you know, even that $1,400 a month in the first place. You know, these crazy New Yorkers, they think. But now they're all getting offers on their homes, and they get it. They understand it's not so insane. When you earn a New York salary and you're able to telecommute, you got some pretty significant buying power. So I'm blessed. I'm blessed like that. It's nothing less than blessed. Even now, even if any of my talk comes off at all like complaining, not at all. Having these 2 years out here was awakening, certainly for me. And if for me, at 50 years old, how much so one must imagine for a child who has only been a child of New York City all their lives, various boroughs, spending time in other places, spending time in the Catskills and stuff. So they were very familiar with mountain living. We had a place ourselves, a bungalow in the Catskills. So the concept of urban living was not new to them, but the concept of rural living was not new to them. But the concept of rural living, and you can hardly call it rural living because, you know, it's always around some attraction, a lake, a resort mountain. So that makes it more like the suburban experience. And they've been living in Staten Island for a number of years, which is already quite suburban. So it's really suburban with the New York City trappings, you know, versus suburban with the Pennsylvania. Is it trappings? Is it, you know, mind your own business, you do your thing, I'll do my thing, I probably own a gun, blah, 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 blah. Pennsylvania's different. Philadelphia is, you know, it's got that nearness to Philadelphia effect too. So for anyone who's watched It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, kind of like the Seinfeld of Philly, accurate, dead on, spot on accurate. You know, a bunch of good old boys that would come up with a scheme for whatever and think that they could get away with it too. Philadelphians think highly of themselves. I feel a certain connection to Staten Islanders, even though I really can't stand the place. the way New York locals view Manhattan, having the anchor city of the world in their backyard, but living a suburban existence within sight of it, does something to one's psyche. What does it do to one's psyche? It's not exactly easy to explain, but look at famous Staten Islanders and see what they have in common. Look at those practical jokers from years ago. It's kind of a harsh edge that could easily be mistaken for a Philadelphian. It's that same harsh edge that you see in like Danny DeVito's character. Even though Danny DeVito isn't a Philadelphian, he plays it very well. Joe Pesci has it. You know, it's almost New Yorker, but not quite. A real tough guy attitude. And anyone who knows about the Philadelphia sports fans can probably attest to the fact that there is a wild, tough guy thing going on there. Our Eagles Stadium, where the football games are played, was the first sports stadium that had to have, or chose to have, needed to have, a built-in court to take care of the misdemeanors and stuff that happened during the game, so it wouldn't clog up the court system in Philadelphia after every Eagles game. They can just have a judge deal with it right there. Eagles court. So it's a real thing. Edgar Allan Poe, Philadelphia. Look at some of the famous criminals and psychopaths. When you're both a psychopath and a Philadelphian, you get some interesting cases. I'm not even going to use their names here. They don't warrant the recognition. But they would be names you recognize. So I feel a certain kinship. Oh, so where does it come from? The kinship with the Staten Islanders? It's because where a local New Yorker has Manhattan within sight, but they're not Manhattanites. They're not the people who come in from all over the world for the opportunities of New York. They were just born there, not really there. Philadelphians is like the next city down from New York that could have been New York. Philadelphia could have been the country's capital. It's where the Declaration of Independence was signed. It's where the country was born. But it's not where they decided to make the capital. They chose a more fair location, Washington, D.C., halfway down the East Coast. It had to be fair to the southern states. Anyone who saw the musical Hamilton, is familiar with nobody knows what happens behind the door. So, Philadelphia lost being the country's capital, and it lost the, being the capital of commerce and business because of the geographic advantage of New York City, the harbors, how easily it is protected, in times of war. It's an easily defensible location, a lot of ports, and access to the mainland. So New York became New York, one of the handful of truly world-class anchor cities, right? Up there with Paris and London. Paris, London, New York, and something in Germany, I don't know. And Philly became an also-ran. Philly has New York envy. No one will say it out loud, but it's definitely there. It's, So I'm a Philadelphian. And I was blessed enough to have this 2 years of time in the mountains near where I grew up, at where I vacationed, and gave my child an opportunity to see different ways, while still suburban in the middle of the mountains and the woods with lots of freedom, very little stranger danger. You could just ride your bicycle, like those images of the 80s, riding your bicycle around. Have a trampoline in your yard, be as loud as you wanted in your house without worrying about neighbors hearing, or no banging on the floors or banging on the walls. If you wanted to jump up and down on the floor in your own house, you could do it. The power of the suburbs, the power of the real suburbs, not the cramped suburbs in the boroughs of New York City. I don't mean to be sour grapes about it or anything, but I am not thrilled about doubling my living expenses for half the space. It's something I have to do. It's not something I want to do. But I got a place that's plenty big. I got a 3-bedroom. Plenty of the space for the kid to occupy and grow into. But renting, the life of renting is the life of 1 or 2 year leases. So who knows what the future will bring. At 11 years old, they're having more and more choice over themselves. And with each passing year, there's new milestones. B'nai mitzvah, driving, legal adult. Really isn't until 25 until you pass your last one, being able to rent a car. I'm glad it didn't turn out as bad as it might have. It's interesting that my current landlord's decision to sell has forced me to rethink where I need to be. It's good to be close. It's good when both parents are close to their child, but I don't really see much reason to stay in New York anymore. It's just so hikes up the living expenses. The only reason is if you have no choice, I think, in my opinion. If your job doesn't let you telecommute full time, that's a position of weakness in my mind. Why should I be bound to the New York area because other people are bound to the New York area? Parents should be close to the kid, do what's best for the kids, get more space, get more freedom, learn to drive. I'm moving back. Moving back into the city now of all times. But I shall make the best of it. I shall get as much green as I can. Green of the green belt. Green of the wonderful New York City park system. Literally a block away. Lakes, playgrounds, so that'll be good. No campfires. You can't light a campfire in these parks. So I'll try and get as many campfires in before we go. I'm so glad it was a 3-day weekend. So glad. This was food for the soul. It has been not 3-day weekends. It's been mostly like day and a half. So it's, hour and a half each direction. If you hit any traffic, it's easily 2 hours. So on the conservative side, it's a 6-hour round trip for, a day and a half. One full day, and maybe half the next day. If you're lucky. It's been very difficult and against my will. But I'm starting to grow a backbone. I'm starting to, call it out. certain amount of discretion in the system. Drawing a picture that there is no discretion in the system and things have to be kept to a rigid schedule is wrong. It's just downright wrong. Why would anyone do that? The whole reason to homeschool is to accommodate for the child and the learning style of the child and to do what's best for the child. It's about the child. When they express desires, it should be listened to. So, I got a third day. Thank you for that third day. I didn't even have to ask for it. It just, suddenly the plans changed. Don't know how that happened, but I'm grateful for it. I have a week coming up with them, but that week will be in the middle of my move. But a week is a gift, so middle of move or not, I will make that week work. It will be a wonderful week, a week of a lifetime, not necessarily vacation time doing lots of vacation-y adventure activities, but maybe more designing your life, looking at what you have, looking at what you keep, looking at what you want your new bedroom to be like, looking at what your prized possessions are, what you value in material items, what you value in attributes of self. Designing your environment to emphasize those attributes of self. Things like places to sit down at a desk, places to work, places to concentrate, places to go into the zone, places to, go into your own head for hours at a time. With a kind of focus that is just a competitive advantage in life. Competitive advantage in life is what I'm talking about. So, do I turn this into a discussion of the zone and the flow? Perhaps I do. Perhaps I do. So one of the things working against you in a cramped apartment with a lot of stuff going on is the only way to have quietness of the mind is to close a door to your room if you're that lucky. And whatever distractions are in your room, you're stuck with. So you're actually trying to find a quiet place in your mind, in the same place you probably sleep, in the same place you have a lot of media devices. So right now, if you want a quiet place in your mind, you walk outside into the yard and you get in a trampoline, the big kind. It's a 12 or a foot to 15 foot, I forget exactly what, but I got the big trampoline. And you can just go into the trampoline and just jump and zone. And even if you bring your media with you, you're not watching. It almost disables your ability to watch. So the most you can do with music, and music often helps you transition into the zone and the flow. So I don't know how much footage I have of my child transitioning into that zone or flow state. It's just a pleasure to watch. My heart leaps for joy. And that seems to have been the alternative to the bedroom for that kind of contemplative, going inside of yourself state. So I think they're trained. I think they're trained well to do it. I clearly won't be able to have a trampoline of that size set up in Staten Island. Maybe I'll ask the grandparents if they want to put it in their backyard. I don't know. Whew, such stress, such needless, uninvited, superimposed onto my life stress. I would have probably lived with this hour and a half drive each day, if it could have been a 2 full days, if it could have been a full weekend on the weekends. If the weekends weren't cut short, 6 hours worth of driving is not a problem. When the weekends aren't skipped. So, according to the letter of the agreement, I'm responsible for getting the kid to and from activities scheduled on the weekend. So, of course, schedule the activities on the weekend and make me responsible for getting them to and from those activities. And if I can't, the weekend's cut short. Right? Am I right? With a homeschooled kid where all that is optional, where it could have been made to accommodate, but instead it was made this way. So now I'm forced back over that, right? So it's a position of defeat and a position of weakness at first glance on the surface, It's like, okay, well, fine. But, with each passing year, things change. With each passing year, that kid grows in their mind and their head. They understand more deeply. It's not me. It's not me. I understand that there's the perception here that I might be, feeding thoughts. It's not. It's not. It's awareness. It's not lacking intelligence. I'm allowed to complain too. I'm allowed to gripe. If something should be griped and complained about, let's gripe and complain about it. Let's fix it too. And that's exactly what I'm doing. I am fixing it. Getting closer to the kid. In all times of distress, good old Blue is there. Poof, what do you need? Poof, what do you need? But when you have a good old Blue, you might also just have an all-powerful genie. And it isn't always what you bargained for. Even though you gotta live in the little tiny living space. All-powerful is all-powerful. So I'll blow up on YouTube. I'll talk freely and candidly. And if anyone has any complaints about it, take them up. But just make sure you have it in context. You gotta watch through all the videos. Don't just take an audio clip from one video and say, haha, look, now you need it in context. So, start at, say, video 1, and work your way through to video 1,500, or whatever I'm up to, I don't know. And then have it in context and make sure that you're not speaking out of context. Careful how you frame things. Do I even post this one? Yeah, probably I do. No one's gonna have the patience for it. Played at 2 times speed. Oh, was that something? Oh, was that something? Oh, was that something? Oh, was that something? Quantity versus quality? Who's gonna watch this one? I've got some hardcore fans out there, and they probably will watch it. This one is probably gonna be just for me. It's good, 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 it's good. It's cathartic and therapeutic, and exactly what I need. And for a while, I'm sure it was exactly what the kid needed too. A little too much so, I'm sure, was the thought, maybe. Things can be better. Your dad doesn't have to be trapped in a tiny apartment with what's left over after child support. What's left over after child support can still be phenomenal cosmic powers. up on social media. Do it in a way where you can make some money. Invent something. Change the world. Do the fourth circle of Akagai. What the world needs. And what the world needs is a cure to the true pandemic of the time. What is the true pandemic of the time? Well, the true pandemic of the time is anxiety. Everyone has anxiety. Everyone thinks their anxiety is so special and different. Don't talk about anxiety as a general thing the world has. My anxiety is my own, and it is so much different than everyone else's. No, it's not. Anxiety means that you have a failure of your parents to train you to respond to things that are not actually life-threatening in a way that your body thinks is life-threatening. So, I have the suburbs to thank for this. I have my friend Guy Brookstein to thank for this. Guy Brookstein, who is, one of the best human beings I've ever known, who was my fighting buddy growing up. And I cannot shout out to him enough in these videos. He was my go-to guy. Guy was my go-to guy when I was picked on in middle school, because my crew, my J crew, such as it were, and I think you know what I'm alluding to by J, the J crew, was not a very nice group of people. They were very quick to nickname and ostracize, just out of pure meanness to the sensitive kid. I was sport. It's funny, I watched Mean Girls as the movie on movie night with my kid. These things have real special meaning to me. The next one's gonna be Heather's. I tell my kid, I tell everyone, think in extremes and work in moderation, okay? You have Philadelphia in your blood, so you are capable of great things, terrible things, but great things. But don't go there. You don't need to go there. You don't live a loveless life like Voldemort. Your parents love you deeply. And your superpowers are yours to use as you see fit. So develop those superpowers. Do not be satisfied with the powers of mere mortals. That's boring, and it puts you in a position of weakness. Push yourself and strive in areas of loveworthiness while in the flow state, so you're enjoying it, and make habits of it so it over time becomes not work. Every martial artist, every mathematician, every coder and programmer, every artist knows this. The habits, the tools of the trade get internalized inside your body. So tools are a thing. Tools are a very real thing. And the ascendance to supreme control over those tools without thinking with the language center, without thinking with the part we call sentience, but thinking rather with the part that we call the animal part, the muscle memory part, the worm. The worm controls the walking. The worm is at the pituitary gland in your spinal cord, okay? Your most primitive animal is your worm. And that controls walking, and it's the essence of muscle memory, right? Bipedal locomotion is a triumph of calculations and mathematics that you don't even think about that you're doing. Just like throwing a ball, parabolic motion, all this high order mathematics having to do with having a model of the world in your head, having a model of your own body in your head, having a model of physics and interactions in your head, and having it all actually accurate enough so that you're not tripping over your feet and falling all the time. And that existed before, large tribal societies. That existed at almost the the ferrets and the meerkats, right? You see the meerkats popping up to look for predators on the prairies. That's the beginning of bipedal locomotion, just getting up high, when not in the tree, still getting some height. Just that little extra bit of height to see the cats coming at you over top of the foliage. That's all you need. Bipedal locomotion is a form of striving, Just feel it in your body, feel it in your bones. And so, you had colony animals like meerkats getting upright to see predators and then having to get to that next place, so running in an upright posture. How can people I know there's no hard and fast evidence for this, but how could people really even question the evolution of bipedal locomotion? Look for predators, get to that next place fast, and I don't know, maybe a little bit of aquatic existence, standing up in the water so that your head is above the water for 10,000 years here and there, where you evolve that layer of fat blubber that's more like aquatic mammals than it is like monkeys. We're like the only primate that has a layer of fat between our skin and muscle, like seals do. So, that lends itself to the bipedal theory too, because, head above water, it wouldn't do you much good to be on all fours. And that also lends credence to having hair on the top of our head still, because it's the only part that wasn't submerged in water, right? It's not advantageous to come out of the water all sopping wet with wet hair. You get sick, you die. So rinse and repeat for a few 100,000 years. All the monkeys lose their hair beneath the waterline. What about the hair left on your head, and why does it grow so long? Well, some theories go that the babies hold on to the mother's hair and float along behind the mother as the mother's wading along, waist deep or higher in the water. That also explains the number of and positioning of the two breasts. So, these things are part of that righteous meta feedback loop as well, because this stuff, after you go from something like a meerkat to something like a Lucy, Lucy the Homo habilis, one of the earliest forms. I don't know how many, hundreds of thousands of years ago, but when you get back to 400,000 years, it's hardly recognizable as a split between monkeys and humans. But when you get to 200,000 years, the split is much clearer, and you start to get creatures like Homo erectus, and Homo habilis, and things like Lucy. I think Louis Leakey's discovery, was it? And from there, that starts to get more and more human-like. It goes from kind of a hobbit-like creature to what we know today. And hobbits wouldn't be terribly dissimilar from a modern human either. So, it's only putting the final polish on in these last steps of evolution. Neanderthals might not even have been a different species, right? If the definition of species is not being able to interbreed, and Neanderthals could interbreed, it's just, a form of racism to call one of them Neanderthals and another one Homo sapiens sapien, the thinking person's thinking person, right? The meta of meta. The true sort of grasp at a type of superiority. How humans operate. That's the modus operandi. Show me a human who's not trying to demonstrate themselves better than the next human. That's what they do. It's a hierarchical system. Unfortunately, this whole tribal thing that we do, going from colony animals, right? So when we were moles in the ground, to when we were meerkats popping our heads out of the ground. These are mostly colony animals. They live together for the advantage of numbers, for huddling for warmth, right? During the cold times, they huddle for warmth. There's even a form of convection when colony animals pile on each other, and they dig down in the center for warmth, and they push the ones who are in the center out to the sides so they get more air, and they stop suffocating. But you trade off fresh air for warmth, and there's like a convection of colony animals. I learned about this from sugar gliders. Sugar gliders still do this. And so you go from that kind of colony animal to more of a tribe or a troop-like animal, like the meerkats, and then you go to more of monkey tribes, and then you go to highly structured chimpanzee and bonobo and orangutan tribes and baboons. And then at that level you get real clear hierarchical structures, sometimes where each member of, say, a 30-member tribe knows their standing. They know who is higher on the hierarchy, and they know who's lower on the hierarchy, mostly with males, and mostly, I think, with baboons. I've heard this described. But the hierarchical structure is so friggin' clear that they know which individual from the tribe is one step above them, and they know which individual from the tribe is one step below them. Think about that, and think about us humans. Oh my God, right? So, how does that affect the behavior? Well, they say the two most stressful points to be are the very highest and the very lowest, right? To be the silverback gorilla, always, guarding against the next alpha male angling to, knock you off the hill. That's stressful. Top alpha male is stressful. Bottom alpha male is also stressful because everyone can kick you around and bully you however you like, and there's just nothing you can do about it. There's no recourse. Life isn't worth living almost at that bottom. And they become, horribly dysfunctional and die of health diseases related to their mental state, because, epigenetics, the other Michael Levin. If you haven't watched his TED Talk, watch it. We become what we think ourselves into becoming. We become what we think ourselves into becoming. We become what we think ourselves into becoming. And your position in the hierarchy is, in fact, important. And the highest position and the lowest position are the most stressful. So somewhere in between is best. Now, in my estimation, nothing is better than somewhere in between, but with secret weapons, with highly developed skills and capabilities that ain't anyone's business, and they can't be taken away from you. It's not a cache of nuts. It's not, an extra wife or two on the side that you're sticking it on. Those are not resources that are inside of you. Those are not internalized things. But a monkey who knows how to dry a nut so it's easier to crack to get the meat inside, that knowledge, that's a valuable internal asset. So what you're trying to do to alleviate depression is to know how to dry a nut and then crack it, to have greater resources, greater access to resources than the other monkeys who don't know how to crack those types of nuts. You can even watch that. That's a real thing. Monkeys who learn to crack nuts. I forget, it might be macaws. Macaws come to mind, but that's a real thing. So this is knowledge, this is information, this is stuff that in internalizes inside of you, first as an encoded thought, which feels meaningless. It feels like just words. An idea is just words until you reproduce that idea in your head and imagine, you apply your own imagination and creativity, almost as if you rediscovered the thing in a contest for survival. And you have that aha moment. You go, yes, now I see how my life improves from this, words elude me, but, getting Vim into your fingers, the Vim, the VI text editor that I'm always talking about, huge example of this. They can't take that away from you. And it's cracking the nut, It helps you think. You can keep a journal with it. You can code in any programming language within it. You can work on computers that don't have a graphical user interface with it. Headless computers, no desktop. So you can connect in remotely to computers, and you can edit text files on there, not using the graphics capability of your local machine, just purely the connected in, connection to that remote machine, and you can edit a text file running Vim on that machine there. Full screen editors, they call it. There's still a type of graphics, honestly. What we call a text terminal, it's still, rows and columns and symbols being mapped to, memory locations. So it's a form of graphics. It's just a very different form of graphics than the pixels that we're used to on our Windows and Mac desktops. This is still 2 lanes. This is fine. This is fine. This is fine. There's no fire. It's all in your state of mind. Mind over matter. First with your environment, then in your mind, then in your body. Honest to goodness. Honest to God. All right? I'll say it. Honest to God. I don't really know how I feel about the big old G question. My spirituality is still a work in progress. But what I do know is that there is so much more going on than what our senses tell us. And that which falls under the umbrella of science, observable, reproducible. Observable? Are you kidding? Can you see an electromagnetic wave? I mean, there's ways to detect it, but honestly, if there were radio waves and we were barely tuned in onto them until their discovery, how much more is there? One of the big sci-fi concepts out there is that just as noisy as the electromagnetic spectrum is with encoded messages like radio and television that we're sort of listening for with projects like SETI, well, gravity waves are just as, potential for communication. More so because of the distance they can span. Electromagnetic waves need tremendous amounts of energy put in and have this drop off that makes it and low spread. Like it has to be very directed in these pinpoint spreads at high energy. So you're all, and welcome to Staten Island, my friends, right? If I was talking about a certain vibe, there you have it. We're crossing over the Goethals Bridge into Staten Island, and you can start to feel the vibe. It's almost palpable. Just keep a nice long following distance and you'll be fine. 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, 4 1,000. 4 1,000, that's much too close. We're going for 8 1,000, ladies and gentlemen, but traffic is slowing down, so we gotta slow down too. I don't want to get too close for fear of license plates and stuff. I'll trust the Google blurring technology. I might might keep this video. I talked about a lot of good stuff. I might bend some people's noses out of shape, but you know, it's necessary. You know, I'm growing a backbone, and my kid deserves to see their old dad with a backbone. So, backbone. I want to say achieved, but no, not really achieved. Backbones are an interesting thing, by the way. What does backbone have to do with standing up for yourself, having a rigid spine and literally standing up for yourself, you might think? No. Look at a moment at the lamprey eel. Go ahead and Google it. I'll give you a moment. Flip over to Google, search on lamprey eel. What you're gonna find is one of the few animals which has a vertebrae, but does not have a jaw. It is a jawless vertebrae, a vertebrae with no jaw. How would a jaw get into that picture? What is the connection between having a backbone and having a jaw? Why are there vertebrae? Are there more vertebrae? Yeah, well, like lungfish and stuff, those really weird alien looking creatures. They're on their way to being like us. They have a backbone, but they are nothing like us. They look like some giant parasite or something, some alien, suction cup, skin sucker, really alien. Well, that's because the thing that starts to make these creatures look like us and in common with us is the addition of the jaw. You take that ring of teeth that a lamprey eel has, position it in a jaw, maybe have some eye-like light-sensing things, eye-like things, and suddenly the alienness of it starts to diminish and it starts to become recognizable. Well, where does that jaw come from? Where did the backbone come from? Take the top vertebrae, the first thing that would have evolved, the first link in the chain, the top of the spinal cord, the first bone of the vertebrae. How close is the top of the spinal cord to what you would call the mouth? It's pretty close, right? Especially if you don't have much of a head like a lamprey eel. How different is that top vertebrae from a jaw? Bones? Things sticking out of it? Well, teeth? Yeah, not very different. It's not a stretch of imagination to say if a ring of rigid material has evolved to be something like a mouth with teeth, it's not terribly different from the first bone of your backbone, the vertebrae. So the theory goes, so one of the various theories, there's lots of theories on the evolution of the backbone. One of the theory goes that either the jaw or the first vertebrae, happened. It evolved for whatever reason, either to protect your nerves, that, very precious and sensitive nerve, or, so you see everyone just jockeying to cut in front of me. You can't even leave one car distance. I'm trying to leave more than that so that the blurring software has an easier time with the license plates, but you're going to see everyone who sees that as an invitation to cheat, all the cheaters. So how much of a stretch is it that after the first either jaw or vertebrae evolved, that a gene duplication event occurred? So now instead of one vertebrae or one jaw, you have two vertebrae or two jaws, and one clearly starts to differentiate itself as the jaw, and the other starts to differentiate itself as the first vertebrae in your backbone. Not such a stretch. That's very reasonable, easy to imagine. And then, like through a continental drift process, a lot like Pangea, with the Americas drifting away from Europe and Africa, the jaw and the spinal cord started to drift apart from each other, leaving room for something like a head in the middle and a brain in the middle. One continued to wrap around the spinal cord at one side of the brain, and the other continued to wrap around the, place where you take in the nutrients, the mouth. And it becomes even more interesting when you think about the fact that, the mouth side of it has some sort of teeth, some sort of, thing to hook onto or cut into or otherwise serrate the meat or the food. And you realize that having a backbone is also closely connected to a weapon of sorts. Give a worm a switchblade and he's got a backbone. Give a worm a weapon and he gains a backbone. Backbones and the ability to fight, to stand up for yourself, to have at least one side of you that's not squishy worm, is tied to who we are at a point of evolution in a part of our nervous system so deep, so core, that we are utterly and completely unaware of it, except for the fact that we come up with expressions like grow a backbone. Grow a backbone. In growing a backbone, you're also growing some teeth, some claws, some weapons. And again, the formation of, essential character types. Green arrows and blue circles, right? These things are linear in nature. They're starting to move from like sponges around animals too, right? Sponges are animals. Sponges are some of the first animals. You got your Cambrian explosion where life experimented with lots of different designs, endless designs. Most of them are like lost to science because they didn't have enough rigid body parts to fossilize. But we see the ones that survived, we see the ones that fossilized well, the ones with rigid body parts. Trilobites come to mind. Anything with shells. But a lot of worms were lost. It's probably why there's not a good fossil record of the early vertebrates. It wasn't even necessarily bone, even the rigid material. There's no reason rigid material in your body has to be bone. Okay, so bone is calcium. Calcium is a foamy metal. It's an oxidized metal. Various forms of oxidized metal, but oxidized metal nonetheless. And that is a supplement. That's a dietary supplement. Calcium, the chalky substance, what we consider as like limestone, what we consider the chitlin of insect shells, and our fingernails and our bones, everything that's really rigid is some form of metal. Combined with other things, of course, but metal nonetheless. Didn't have to be that way, because what else can become rigid that our body is greatly composed of? Top 10 answers on the board, survey says. Can I see carbon? Ding! Top answer, carbon. Carbon can become rigid material. However, like what? The graphite of pencils? You want your bone made out of pencil lead? Pencil lead, modern pencils are not lead, it's graphite. Diamonds, so you're expecting some process in your body to compact and harden your carbon that's in your body, maybe pulled straight from out of the air, the way trees do it. But nonetheless, plenty of carbon in your body compact it into diamonds? Nah, it's not going to happen. So, life experiments with all this stuff. You need something rigid. You need something rigid for a shield. You need something rigid for a backbone, for a vertebrae. You need something rigid for teeth. You need something rigid for internal stilts. Internal stilts. Well, that's when you came onto land, when they became stilts. But before you come onto land, if you got a backbone and you got this metal that you're extruding this way and that to protect your spinal cord, how about shooting a couple of side branches off to become a pair of fins and to help with locomotion? Replace the flagella, right? The soft, flicky flagella, which is really going to have a size limit because you can't put a lot of power behind a hairy extrusion from your cell wall into now let me swim fast with this. What do you make it, a little propeller or something? No. What you do is you have that same cell wall material, and instead of a little stringy thing, you have it coming out as a little set of paddles from some oars. So you can extrude the oars from your backbone, and you can extrude the paddles from the cell wall material, and there's your fins, right? Easy thought experiments. And so this is how you get life templates. This is how the process of epigenetics and, quote, random mutations combine with the desires of the living thing. The sensor, because they have sensory equipment. They sense light, they sense heat, they sense, alkaline level of the water. They know what's going on. They might even sense electrical fields like sharks. Who's to say they don't have that, sixth sense that sharks and other animals have. And, some animals can even, manage those electric fields like a tool. You got electric eels. So there's some abilities beyond what humans can readily map their minds around that can very easily let a creature kind of sort of take advantage of its own evolutionary path. The tiniest little way. But if that can happen, which we see time and time again, it can. Again, Google that other Michael Levin and watch his flatworms, his two-headed flatworms. If that's possible, then what's possible in a human being who has actual consciousness and sentience today? How much is really possible with mind over matter in terms of thinking yourself into a better place, thinking yourself into better internalized capabilities? Learning new languages is a great example, and some people are naturally predisposed to that. I am not. And other people learn slowly but better. They learn slow, but they are more adept at using the tools and knowledge that they learn, like me with Vim and Python. So if you're not a natural multi-language person, if you're not a natural person who absorbs and learns tools quick and takes them inside of you, focus on fewer tools and make that your Ikigai. It's certainly my Ikigai. What the world needs is someone laying out a clear path, such as this. You a slow learner? Does that depress you? Well, learn slow, but get it done. Get her done. Learn that thing. Learn Vim. Get real natural at journaling, and then get real natural at creating .py files, and then get real natural at telnetting or SSHing into remote machines. Get real natural at controlling thousands of machines at the same time. And get real natural at the data feedback loops to make sure that these, that these automations that you're creating are working correctly and doing your bidding properly. And pretty soon, you're Mickey Mouse controlling this bit storm of brooms well, like his sorcerer to whom he was apprenticing. And become that sorcerer. You can do it. That's what I propose. And that is why I keep this video, ladies and gentlemen. That is why this is upload 2 of my drive to drop off my kid. Let them see you at your best. We deserve it. We deserve it. Thanks for joining me. Hope to see you again soon. And don't forget to subscribe.